I'm Shareil. I lead our success efforts here at Arrows, and my background is basically 10 years of focusing on the topic of customer onboarding, from building the teams, building the programs, scaling those teams, and then thinking through how do you go beyond just human-led onboarding and partner with marketing and product to then actually scale those efforts to get to a point where you can confidently say we're offering options for most of our customers, if not all of them, to go through an onboarding to see the value from our tool. Um, and I joined Arrows about a year ago to take that experience and help others with their onboarding programs and their onboarding processes.
I'm Sandy. I'm head of CS at Osmos. Osmos is an external data platform where we're focused on helping customers streamline their onboarding process to operational systems. So it's a really fun spot for me because not only am I helping customers on board, both Shareil and I are in products where we're focused on onboarding and onboarding and data in particular. In my career, I have worked entirely with customer onboarding, um, in a variety of roles and a variety of positions. So, onboarding challenges, data onboarding is really near and dear to my heart, and really love helping organizations streamline this process and get quicker time to value.
It's nice to see people care about onboarding now. Like now that there's a tie to actual retention and revenue
Yeah,
and more people are noticing that and being able to tie data to it to prove it,
yeah,
it finally has brought roles like ours into the spotlight, I think, and has given us a seat at the table to actually help product direction and product design and marketing, because those are all components of good onboarding.
yeah.
It just historically hasn't been viewed that way.
Yeah, and helping new users and other organizations become champions in it as well. So it's really fun to help those new users get empowered, get value quicker, and understand how they can drive change in their organizations. I think when an organization kicks off a new project, one of their first steps in that project is all about how they are going to get that implemented, how they are going to, what information's required to get that first use case operational. And often, um, this new user is faced with needing a set of data, needing a set of data to get that into their product to help get that use case operationalized. And and then that also becomes their first challenge. Because, you know, they're trying to understand, like, well, how much data do I need? Where can I find the data? Do they have to go through different teams to get that data? And and that really hits CS because CS is usually that first contact
Right.
with that new user. So, CS wants to have a great experience, great experience with this new users, but they're usually asking a list of questions. Hey, based on this use case, you need this data, this and this and this. Where can you go find it? Here's the format, and it can be overwhelming for the new user, and so I think both parties in these projects are trying to strike a balance of, um, you know, tr- how can I quickly get the information I need? How can I make it a great experience? Because they're excited. You've got
Hmm.
this organization, these users, super excited about the outcomes they're going to get from your solution, and so to keep that momentum, I really think it comes down to, helping shape that into quick wins and start small.
We want to jam everything into that first call and get everything set up and everything migrated. But to your own point, that end user might not even know what we're doing. They might have just been given a spreadsheet and said, talk to Sandy and upload this data because we need this new
Yeah.
product, right? So there is a component of discovery needed and question asking, but I think there's also a component of having very clear directions and instructions of upload this singular data point. Here is a template of a CSV of what it could and should look like. When we do this one thing, here's what you can expect to see. Now I've taught you how. And the why is bring all this data in, see the full value of this
Yeah.
product, do your job easier. And especially in the data migration world, we want to do that as soon as possible because the output is tied to the perceived value of what you're going to get. Um, but then you run into, I don't have the right data. I need to talk to an engineer. I need to pull data from another source to make this work. So I think if you take a step back, it's such a critical component of onboarding, and it's often listed as a singular task: migrate data.
Yeah.
And that means something so different depending on the company, the end user, your product, their product, the spreadsheets, what the data storytelling looks like. It historically used to be incorrectly perceived as living with a singular team, but it actually is a huge song and dance of cross collaboration internally. Like having your sales rep set you up for success by saying, Sandy's going to reach out in a week, or better yet, Sandy's on the call with me now. She's going to be your point of contact going forward. The main thing she needs is data. And until we get that data to her, we can't go on.
I was just thinking about how to be more proactive, with our customers. I think, in CS every day we're onboarding our customers. We've been customers and have had the experience of being onboarded. One of the things that I've learned is that, how do we help advocate for our new user? Like if they're not empowered
Mhm.
and don't have an assigned sponsor to get data into their project quickly, you know, I feel like it's my job to help communicate those challenges, those risks early on.
Yep.
Um, so I am really helping empower them as well. So it's, not just giving them tools, with the quick wins or, other guidance to help, get champions internally, but be a champion on their behalf.
Right.
And that's what's so wonderful, I think, about being, in onboarding and being customer success is we're really the advocate for everybody we're working with at our customers.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think a big component of onboarding is resetting expectations.
Yeah.
And that's not a dig at sales or at marketing. That's just the reality. Sometimes the product can't do exactly what we said it can do, or it was just misunderstood or misinterpreted. So a lot of it is that resetting of expectations. And I think that's especially critical in the data component. You mentioned earlier, it's not a single line item, and I couldn't agree more. But how do you then tangibly actually break that out and give? And so I think it's also tough because you and I are so biased.
Yeah.
The people doing onboarding internally are biased because it's our product. We know it's easy. We think it's
Yeah.
easy. We are so used to the workaround of clicking 6 times to get to the place we need, but that's a horrible workflow for the user. And we say, go upload your doc, but it's not simply upload your doc. Like that's where customers get stuck, especially on these big homework topics like data, because we have internal biases that say, oh, this is easy to do. Import your CSV and off we go. But that might be 10 steps in itself.
Yeah. And maybe you have a dozen steps, but I think identifying the milestones, right? And then the core dependencies, and then assigning a champion or a sponsor to those key milestones. So,
Yeah.
you're saying, okay, we're working towards, operationalizing this use case. Data migration is, this process, but, the whole project team doesn't need to know, all
Right.
35 steps,
Right.
but you're statusing on those key milestones and where we're at, where you need help.
Yeah, for sure. That's where having a mutual action plan becomes handy because it is a collaboration space for more than two people.
Yeah.
It's Sandy, you're responsible for this. Stuart's responsible for this. Shareil's responsible for this. If we all do our part, that equates to data migration being done
Yeah.
for the moment, right?
Yeah. I think we really have to enable our customer in setting the right expectation, right? Like, they're really always will come to you to prove out the hardest scenarios up front
Right.
that take the most time,
Right.
the most complex data, and and then we know it's going to take those 50 steps instead of those 12. So how do we start by resetting and saying, hey, let's do this, kind of more of the crawl, walk, run,
Yeah.
help get, make you amazing moments. And then you can continue to have, you know, really crisp 12-step plans versus,
Yeah.
the longer 100-step
Yeah.
that gets you one long outcome at some point where you can have this wonderful iterative approach.
Yep. Yep. I love that you use crawl, walk, run because leaders especially often want to breeze through the crawl and walk and get to the running part and get a product up and running, right? But if that's not the experience your customer is having, you better spend time. Like, I don't care if they're stuck in crawl for 5 months, but you need to understand why they're stuck in crawl for 5 months. Is it that individual user, which sure, that could be a one-off and they're just unresponsive and you can't combat that. But if more than one person gets stuck in crawl, why?
Yeah.
What's going on in crawl? Have you put too many steps in there? Have you put too few steps in there? There's a balance. And this is why we often preach onboarding never ends. That's not to say there shouldn't be a moment where you can have a checkbox or some sort of internal measurement of that. In fact, you should absolutely have that. But that's a combination of steps taken, instructions given, the in-app activity, actual product usage, all those components. But also why we preach that is because you should be continuously improving onboarding and you should be continuously making that user's life easier. And to do that, onboarding can never end. You can't have a singular playbook and say, all right, we're going to onboard the next 100 Osmos customers to this playbook.
Yeah.
Like, that's unrealistic. Which is why I think historically this topic has been treated as a reactive motion. And I've seen it, I've seen it negatively passed back and forth between success and sales in the past. And now it's more of a positive thing. Like, we actually want to own this because there is value in it, or we want to own this here. That all comes from tweaking and optimizing and changing steps.
In starting the success steps in sales, right?
Oh,
Like, so it's just, it's more of a continued conversation. It's not this big transition.
yep.
And I think I think customers really, it takes a little bit of rethinking to kind of say, hey, we're gonna start a little bit smaller and we're gonna analyze the data that you've used and,
Yeah.
and operationalize this. But what I think happens is that you iterate on what works and then you refine it and you keep that energy with your customer and on the project and on the value and
Right.
that's when it's just really a ton of fun,
Yep.
right? You're mutually, helping them
Yeah.
find all these wins
Yeah.
and drive their outcomes.